Lance Lambert. Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Vehicle Show. We are at the Rodarama Car Show in Puyallup, Washington. This has been around long enough that I'm going to call it a traditional show now. And it is a rod and custom show. It is par excellence. There are some really good cars here because of the people standing behind me. Mr. Larry Hansen, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Lance. Enjoyed having you here.
And Linda and Gary Scheibel, you are the team, along with Linda, your wife, that have put this together. How did this come together so nicely?
Well, we've spent the last year looking for cars, and I think we've got a really good selection of cars this year, and we've had a great crowd, so we're thrilled.
It is a great crowd. We got in here, we've got a whole lot of cars to look at and do some interviews and all, but it sure looks like good material out here. What is the cherry on top of the shake here?
Well, it's the car right behind you. I tried for a year to get this car to come to our show, and he finally agreed, and here he is, and we're proud to have him.
And that's the 23 Ford T-Bucket. Maybe we can get an interview with him later.
I hope you can. He's a very nice gentleman.
Well, on behalf of the viewers and everybody that's here, thank you very much for putting this show on again, and thank you very much for tuning into the show. If you don't watch the show, we don't have a show, so now let's go take a look at some cars, meet some really nice people, enjoy some great music. Thanks for watching. Russ Freund, this 23 T-Bucket is so nostalgic but so tasteful, and it looks like absolute perfection for somebody that's into T-Buckets. It doesn't come any better than this. Tell us about it.
Well, it's a 1923 Ford Roadster. It's all steel, Ford flathead powered, and kind of built in that early 60s theme.
It's so traditional, the flathead, of course. What was the inspiration for this?
The 1/8 scale model kits from Monogram from back in the day. And growing up as a kid, my dad had those and has always been into hot rods. And those were at the end of my bedroom in a hallway, and I looked at them every day, and I always loved those cars.
So one day you woke up and had one in the garage.
Yep, I had to have one, so.
It's really classy. This style is traditional, and sometimes it's kind of in your face a little bit, but this one just really emits class.
Well, I try to keep it, kind of subtle in certain aspects, as clean as I possibly can, and just kind of classy.
This has been in a lot of shows. You mentioned off camera. How many magazine covers has this been on?
6 or 7.
It's your first television appearance, right?
Yes.
I've seen you driving this. It looks a little bit crowded in there.
It's cozy. Yeah, very cozy.
When you're at a show like this, the T-Buckets, they were huge back in the 60s, and then they kind of went away. Now they've come back, and this car's been around for, 5-6 years?
Yeah, 2011 is when I finished it.
So maybe you were one of the people, at least in the Northwest here, that got the love going again for it. Do you get anything like that from people? Do they say, oh, so glad to see a T-Bucket?
Yeah, I get that. My favorite comment is when they tell me they've seen the car before from the 60s, and I have to tell them, no, it's a fresh build, Yeah.
Well, when I approached you about doing an interview, it's because I remember the Toppers Car Club here in Tacoma area back in the 60s. They had one that, at least in my memory, may not have been a reality, but in my memory looked very similar to this, and you walked into their shows on the Armory, and there it was right in front of you, and I walked in, I was like 12 or something, and the Whalers were playing in the background. It was like life did not get any better.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Any advice for anybody that's thinking about doing a T or a throwback to older styling?
You just got to jump in and do it. If you don't try, you'll never know.
And the flathead in it, what year is that out of?
It's a 48 Ford flat motor.
And those were 80 horse?
I believe so. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Russ. This is an absolutely breathtaking car.
Thank you.
Recently, I was at the Portland Roadster Show, and I saw this 27 Ford. It just blew me away. I thought it was so cool and unusual, and the choices are very different. Dustin Smith, nicely done.
Thank you.
How did this, this is not the wheel combination, the color, this is very unusual, but it really seems to work. How did you decide on this?
Just to be something different. There is nothing else to it. It's just something different. I kind of had thoughts of an A and a T and everything going together and it looking like a real high boy, and that's how the frame came together and everything got cut down, and I wanted more of a functioning car than just a stock T. Those didn't seem that, I don't know.
Well, I'm not that knowledgeable on old gow jobs or hop-ups or whatever, but this looks to me like something our grandfathers or my grandfather, your great-grandfather, would have been running around with.
Yeah, I would think so. I honestly, it just was a weird idea. It seemed to work, it seemed to go together, and I think it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The engine on it, you have done kind of a traditional, as in way traditional kind of hop-up on that, right?
No, it's basically just a stock round down Model A engine, and it just was cleaned up, and pretty much it's just stock. It's twice the horsepower as like a T motor would be. So
the motor in this, is it a hot rod motor from back then, or the way they hopped them up back then, or what's in there?
It's just a stock Model A engine. Basically the T came with a 20 horsepower motor. I doubled the horsepower putting an A motor in it. It was about as, I don't know, it was kind of a simple fix to make it more of a drivable, functional car to at least go on the highways and the freeways.
So a whopping 40 horsepower.
Whopping 40 horses.
Yeah, you and early Volkswagens.
Yeah, basically.
So equal of two old Volkswagen motors in there.
Yeah, basically.
Who are these fine-looking gentlemen you have with you here?
Well, this is my youngest brother. This is my youngest son, Ashton. This is Cameron, and this is my oldest boy, Donovan.
Speaking of hop-up, you've got the shirt on there. Do you know what that means, that term means?
No, I do not.
That's what hot rods used to be called before they were hot rods, hop-ups. So what's the coolest thing about having this car in your family?
Well, I think it's pretty cool because it's from way before I was born in 1927, and also it's very cool how it's painted. It's very different. We had a black 1948 coupe, and we also had I forgot what year, but it was a yellow pickup truck. And this is very different from all of them.
Is this going to end up being yours?
Hopefully.
How about you? What do you like about this car?
It's a roadster.
It's a Roadster. How about you?
I like it. I just like the color, and I don't know.
That'll work. So you must be getting all kinds of. This is a different car. So what kind of reaction are you getting from people?
I get a lot of different reactions. Mainly, they're all good. They're all positive. It's kind of a different car. It's different than your typical hot rod or what people would think as a hot rod. It looks like something that was built in the 40s to me.
One of the indications that this car is really popular is we have to get releases signed by everyone whose car we feature on this and anybody who was with that car. I had to stand in line to get this guy to sign a release because he was signing one with somebody else. So this is making a big splash. And I understand this was you entered this for an Amber Award?
Yeah, I brought it to California for the AMBR competition. Had a lot of fun. I just went there to have fun. That's all it's kind of about.
America's most beautiful roadster.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dustin. This is a really cool car, very different. Thanks for bringing us all something that's just a little bit different.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy you like it.
Jay and Diane Scow, this is a really special 52 Ford. I saw this at the Portland Roadster Show last weekend. Really, really liked it. I walked through those shows pretty quick and stopped at the cars I like. This one stopped me in my tracks. So tell us about it.
Well, it's a 52 Ford. I bought it in 1957 when I was 15 years old. And my dad traded a car in at the Chrysler dealership, bought a new Plymouth, and this car was on the lot, and it was $600. My dad worked out a deal with the salesman, and we haggled, and we got it for $587.50.
You remember the exact number?
I do.
The top comes off of this, right? A removable hardtop?
It does. In 1958, I cut the top off of it. I started to cut it off, and my dad just went ballistic, and he said, "You're not going to ruin that car." And then after a while, I guess he thought about it, and he said, "Well, that's probably not the way to treat a teenager." He says, "Son, if you want to wait until spring and you still want to do it, then you have my blessing." So the next weekend, I went around the corner to a buddy's house, and we cut it off.
The things we do.
Yeah.
Well, it works really well. It just blends perfectly. How many, 2 people, 3 people to take the top off? 4?
Originally, when I had it, I could take it off by myself because it didn't have all the metal in it. Now it's got a glass rear window in it, and it would take 4 people, but we use a lift.
You mentioned off camera that you two have been together how long?
43 years this year.
So was it this good-looking guy, or was it a good-looking car that got your attention?
Well, this car sat for 40 years in our garage, so it wasn't this car that got me. But we went to a high school reunion of his. I listened to the guys talk about hunting through the junkyards for whatever he wanted to do next, but it sounded like they did it 4 months ago, not 40 plus years ago. So as we flew home, I said, "Let's get that car out and get it going." He said, "Well, I don't really know exactly what to do." And I said, "You tell me it's a time machine that takes you back. You have to do it just like it was in high school."
You saw the passion from the other people at the reunion.
I did. Well, I saw his passion, but yet the car just sat. So it was a lengthy 6-year body-off restoration. It's been done 2.5 years. But our children, who at the time both lived in Alaska, were so excited and said, "We're going to be there when Daddy drives that car because we've only ever seen it in a garage just sitting." So it's part of our family, and everybody was very excited.
That's really neat. The power plant on this, what's the running gear?
In 1961, I found a wrecked 57 Thunderbird, so I was able to buy the 312 engine out of it. And it now has a tricarb setup on it. I worked in a service station at the time, and making $1.25 an hour, and a guy came in, he says, "Hey, I have a tricarb set up for that." So he sold it to me for $75. So you can imagine that's a lot of money back then, making $1.25 an hour, yeah.
The styling worked back then, it works now. There's some that's like, oh my gosh, what were they thinking?
Well, I spent a lot of time when I was supposed to be studying, drawing pictures and sketching the car, and I knew what I wanted. I knew the design I wanted. I wanted the lines to flow just like Henry would have made it. And so many times you see people do customs, and they add something just to be adding something to be different, and the overall picture isn't real pretty.
And has a real strong semi-custom, almost full custom look to it. Is that just evolved from your sketches in your mind, or?
Yes, going to junkyards and seeing different parts and pictures and thinking about it and sketching it and figuring out whether it's going to fit and working with it. And we've had different taillights in the car. We've had Oldsmobile taillights in it. We had 54 Packard taillights in it. Then I got a set of 56 Packard taillights, and I was putting those in and had them mounted upright. And we looked at the profile of the car, and my wife says, "That isn't going to work." And so she said, "Let's try them inverted." So we did that, and I'm real happy with the result.
Well, we're real happy with the results. This is an absolutely beautiful 1952 Ford, so thank you very much for being on the Vintage Vehicle Show.
Okay, thank you.
And 44 years?
43 this year.
43 years, and you're still holding hands. That's very nice.
Thank you.
Longtime viewers of the show know that this lovely couple have been on the show before, Valerie and Mario Pipkin. We did a whole episode at their collection in south of Seattle, and they always have great cars. And every time I turn around, you have something new. Behind me, if I turn around, is your new, is it a 41 Cadillac?
It is, 1941 Series 62 Cadillac.
How did this come into the fold?
Well, it actually found us. A good friend of ours called us up and told us that this car was available, and we went and looked at it and just fell in love with it.
I can understand. Is it something like this? Has that been, you've sought something like this out, or you just saw it?
No, actually, about 10 years ago, Valerie and I were at Hot August Nights, and we were looking at the cars as they went through the parade. We saw a 41 Cadillac, and we decided then that was the coolest car that was cruising that night. Since then, we've been looking for one, hadn't found one. I happened to be talking with Jim Emmy one day, and he mentioned it. Along the way, I had also said that I wanted a yellow convertible with red interior. Jimmy didn't tell me what color the car was when I went to go see it. So I walked up on it and had to have it as soon as I saw it.
Jim Emmy is a top-notch detailer of Concours-level cars. He's a pretty big deal to get him on board.
He is a pretty big deal, and went to the same junior high school I is for. So for me, he's just Jimmy.
That's Jimmy. What's it? This to me looks like a dream come true. When you're going down, especially with the top down, what's it feel like?
It rides. I drove it here, and I'm a little short, so I had to kind of stretch to drive it, but it drives really well. It's really smooth. It's a heavy car, but it drives really smooth.
Did you feel like a movie star from the 40s?
Yes, I did, actually.
This kind of a car show, there's a lot of rods and customs here. This is is it actually a true Big C classic?
It is, absolutely. Yeah, it's actually a winner from some of the previous classic shows. Yeah.
So some Concours wins.
Yes.
Absolutely.
What kind of reaction are you getting from the people here at the show who probably thought they were going to see all, lowered 60s showboats and 50s Chevs and all? What kind of reaction have you got from people?
People are loving it. They love both the cars, the Packard and this one. We're getting a lot of good thumbs up and smiles and nice car. Yeah.
Enough power in this? What's the motor?
I don't know what the motor is. I know it has 150 horsepower, and for me, that's not enough horsepower, but for the kind of car it is, it does well.
I would think you'd be very sedate and easygoing in this.
Yeah, 50 miles an hour on the freeway. I just cruised it here.
Your jacket says Classic Swagger. That seems perfect for this.
Yes, it is. Perfect.
And that's a new car club in the Seattle area?
Yeah, it's a car club we started maybe 4 or 5 months ago. This is the first time we're breaking the name and the club out. These are trial jackets. Glad to be on the car scene in Seattle with our own club. We're going to get it going, and you'll see us around in the summer.
We'll be around. Okay. Most definitely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being around the Vintage Vehicle Show again. It's great fun, and anytime you want to take me for a ride, I'm in.
Count on it. Anyone you want in.
All right. You heard him. He said it. Lee Dixon, a 33 Ford Coupe. It's really hard to go wrong with something like that. This is a beautiful car. Tell us about it.
Well, we built the car in '97 for my wife. It was for her birthday, and it's been stretched 3 inches. The radiator shell's laid back 2.5 inches. ZZ4, pretty much crate motor stock. It's got a Curry 9-inch Ford rear end in it. Took us 2 years to build it, and House of Colors, candy purple.
It's really purple.
Yeah, it's purple, and it was our blend. House of Colors won't claim it because it's not on their chart, because we did some of our own mixing.
33 Ford, was that on your radar for a long time, or you just were inspired one day?
Yeah, 33 Ford Coupes and 32 Ford Coupes have always been one of my favorite cars, and we found this one that had been started by another person, and we bought it and finished it. Is what we did. So.
Are you a longtime car guy? You grew up, reading the little books and all that?
And, yeah, built stuff in high school and all after high school and all my life.
What do you think it is that 28 through 36 Ford Coupes have always been? Of course, 32, everybody identifies with that because it's such a icon. Right. And 33, they got kind of sleek. What do you think it is about those years that sets everybody's heart a pitter-patting?
I talked to my dad just last week about this because we went and looked at a 32 Ford Roadster, and my dad said that 32 Ford Roadsters, when he was a kid in high school, that was what everybody wanted back then, and that was in the 30s. But yeah, he was telling me the 32 Fords were hot back then, and so they've just always been the icon for the hot rods.
The Rodarama, this is such a big deal car show. I think this is the third or fourth year. It's kind of like, I sort of feel like I'm walking around a great show in 1965 or 68 or so. What's your feeling about the show?
I think this show's awesome. This is my first time at the show with a car. I've been here and seen the cars, but this is my first time with a car here, and I'm very impressed. It's a great show.
Yeah. Well, I'm very impressed with your car. Thank you very much. It's the purpliest car here. If they have an award for that, it's going to be yours.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. What a great time we've had here at the Rodarama Car Show. Great people, great cars. A great big thank you to Larry Hansen and Linda Hansen and Gary and Linda Scheibel. If it wasn't for them, this show would not exist. It is so much fun here, and the Vintage Vehicle Show wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you. So thanks for watching, and until next time, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.